So welcome everyone, and thanks again for joining us. Hopefully you can now see my screen, and I'll see you all arriving in the mural board. So yeah, I'm Stephen Johnson. I'm the project manager for Connecting the Culm. We're going to be hearing a lot today about the project and where we've got to. So we've got lots to talk to you about and lots that we'd like your input on. So just a quick demonstration for those who aren't familiar with mural. On the left-hand side, you can click this second button down and drag over a post-it note, and then you can add your thoughts, but just by typing into that post-it note. And in particular, if you focus anywhere on the mural where there's a pink text or a pink box, that's where we are sort of inviting your comments. But feel free to just drop things wherever you like, and we'll find them. So yeah, I think there's many of you who already know quite a bit about the project, but for those who are new, I'll just quickly, as a reminder, say that Connecting the Culm is a project covering the whole catchment of the River Culm. So it's 100 square miles of mid and east Devon and a little slither of Somerset as well, which drains through different watercourses into the River Culm and ultimately down into the River Exe. And Connecting the Culm is a 3-year project led by the Blackdown Hills AOMB, and is all about working at a catchment scale, working to adapt to climate change, and to do that using nature-based solutions and by working better with people, communities, individuals, different stakeholders, and especially from the bottom up to deliver better solutions. So that's what the project's all about, and we are now 2 years into the project, so we've been doing quite a lot of work and have lots to talk to you about today. So I'll hand over to Dominic, who's going to tell us a bit more about the blueprint and the vision that's been collaboratively developed in the last few months.
Thanks a lot, Stephen. Yeah, great. So at our last forum in June, we floated our draft vision and some images for the future we imagined for the Culm. And we've had quite a lot of feedback from all sorts of different parties on that vision statement and on the images. And those originals are there in the green box. But if we scroll across to the results of that consultative process, Stephen, if you could go across, thank you, and zoom in on the new statement. And the new statement is really a sort of simplification. It's not radically different from the original vision, but we've got it separated into 3 separate statements. We've made it in the future tense, which a lot of people told us was confusing, that it was in the present tense in the old version. So we've said the River Culm will be celebrated as a lifeline that connects people with each other and with nature. And then 3 separate statements about the way the land is managed to protect and enhance the river. And we included this statement whilst sustaining people's livelihoods. This is a working landscape, and it's important that that remains the case, that people can make their living from it, but in a sustainable way. And then throughout the season, so at all times of year, and in a way that's resilient to climate change, the River Culm will have space to flow naturally and safely. And so that's all about making space for nature and for the river to flow in its natural way. The water will run clear, wildlife will flourish, and people will easily access and enjoy all of these benefits. So those are 3 of the key outcomes of the project. And then the images we've got developed. So the other thing that people said was that the images that we showed, it wasn't quite clear how different they were from the current landscape. So we've developed this image which shows the current landscape of the Culm, and this is looking up from sort of, the mid Culm area as the valley bottom widens into the floodplain, and it's looking back up into the headwaters, so that you can see the way the catchment's functioning there, and you can focus in on some of the effects of kind of unsustainable practices in the catchment. And you've got quite an intensive farming operation going on the left. You can see that the Fields are managed right up to the boundary of the river. That's quite intensively farmed. There's not much space for nature. There's a lot of maize being grown, and up on the upland plateaus, you've got quite a bare landscape. It's again on that level ground on the tops, where you've got your clay soils. You've got quite a lot of intensive farming. And another bit of feedback we had was that the way the field systems work and the way you have the scarp on coming off the plateau is very characteristic. And so we've tried to capture that real sort of feel of the character of the landscape. Another serious piece of feedback was that it wasn't really showing the scale of development that's happening in the catchment. And so we brought that right into the foreground to show how current development typically sits. This is a fantasy landscape in some ways. This isn't an actual location that we've pictured. It's a typified view of the catchment. And then, so if you scroll down to what we imagine how this could change in by 2050, and on our website, you can drag a scroll bar across between these two images, and you can explore how they change, because they are mirrored on each other. And so a big difference is that we've got lots more space for nature along the valley bottom. We've got a lot more trees in the landscape. Up on the plateaus, we've got a much more, again, space for nature. We've got heathlands recreated. We've got more woodlands, and those plateau soils are very important to get them functioning properly. We've got in the built environment, we've got much more space for rain gardens, for absorbent streets, for water to be percolating through the urban landscape. And where we have got urban extension, as in the top of the top of the community there, it's green roofs and a lot of space for nature and growing to be happening. And where we've got the farming unit on the left-hand side, it's again, it's diversified. It's no longer doing intensive livestock. It's got a timber operation. It's got some tourism activities going on there. And it's, again, a lot of the land there has been created space for nature with extra tree planting, with an orchard. Up in the headwaters, we've got signs of beavers coming into play. And we've got in the centre of the landscape, we've got renewable energy, a restored mill leat, and an old mill brought back into life. So I think that's a kind of summary of the key changes in that landscape that we've picked up. So this is going to be the sort of kind of anchor stone imagery for the project as we go forward. But we've worked on from that into a whole program of actions, key strategic actions. And Stephen, if you could scroll across to that. We've got several key themes. We've got 7, in fact, but the top themes for connecting the Culm are around flooding and drought, and the water quality, wildlife and carbon, access and heritage, also very important additional outcomes. But in terms of climate adaptation, those are the 2 main drivers. And so we developed some words around and some key concepts around what needs to happen to achieve the outcomes we want. So these are the outcomes in blue. And for flooding, it's improved resilience to flooding. So floodwaters don't threaten communities or damage homes, businesses, and critical transport infrastructure. How do we do that? Working with nature. Remember, that's one of the key pillars for the project. So through working with nature, in soil quality and infiltration is just massively important across the whole catchment. And that's where a lot of the energy around the project needs to go. Reconnect the river to its floodplain, planting trees and hedgerows are also real key cross-cutting actions that need to happen. And beavers have an important role to play, so a potential role to play. So they occur again across many of our actions. And in terms of flooding and the resilience of new development and infrastructure, that needs to be done in ways that is appropriate, located appropriately, and built to be genuinely resilient. And for drought as well, where we're looking at resilience to drought so that water levels can sustain wildlife and are sufficient for farming. Again, it's about recharging aquifers by looking at soil quality. Again, woodlands and heathlands, creating new wetlands, planting trees, and beavers can also play an important role there. So just picked out on those two as those are the sort of core of the enterprise, really. Water quality will have huge benefits from those actions, and water quality came back from all of our work as an important factor, and many people are very want to see those improvements happen, and that's going to have lots of other associated benefits. So looking at fertilizers and farm wastes, looking at public and private sewage treatment works, and runoff from highways. These are all important, as well as, again, soil absorption. And on the wildlife front, reconnecting a wide range of different habitats, perhaps using the river network as the keystone kind of architecture to do that. So in terms of helping a flood and drought, if we do that work as close to the water courses as possible, it's going to have maximum benefits. And benefit wildlife. And so we can go on with CO2 and a lot of benefits there about carbon-rich soils and woodland and wetland and hedgerow creation. Lots of benefits, potential benefits in terms of access, lots in terms of heritage and how that helps shape the project. And so just some of these things are really cross-cutting. So if we scroll down to the priority actions, these are just to give a sense of how we are, how important it is to look at soils, how important it is to look at reconnecting floodplains and planting more trees.
I wonder if, thanks, Dominic. I wonder if now is a good time to just pause and give people a chance to reflect on any of that and open it up to discussion, really, because I think we want to hear any final thoughts on the vision and the images that illustrate that vision. And then this is, as we've said, as Dominic's explained, what we've tried to do is say, okay, that's where we want to get to, that's the destination. What does that actually mean for these different key issues and themes? Because the vision is it's quite broad, and these try and make it a bit more specific. So before we dive into the actions in more detail, does anyone have any feedback on the vision as it stands, or anything that's been explained in terms of the overall aims and the themes that we've that Dominic's been describing? So you can, for anyone who hasn't made it into the mural board, we'll post the link again, but you can also just talk on the Zoom. You could raise your hand or unmute yourself, and you can write in the chat in Zoom as well. Yes, Nick. Hi, Nick.
Hi there. There's an awful lot of stuff about beavers in here. I mean, my understand from what I've read, I mean, I thought that beavers, they're clearly good at holding up water, and they appear to improve the habitat for trout, but appear potentially to be quite damaging to salmon. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I think briefly, I don't know if there's any beaver experts in the audience. I wouldn't claim to be an expert, but I think that we've been following the beaver, the sort of the local context quite closely in the project, partly because just over the hill is the River Otter catchment, which is immediately adjacent to the Culm, where there is a population of wild beavers, as many people probably know, and there has been a lot of there's been a lot of monitoring of those wild beavers in the recent years, and there's been a management framework in place for Devon Wildlife Trust, that have been sort of leading that, and really the outcomes of that, all that monitoring and that evaluation has shown that beavers can have positive effects, like you say, Nick. There's things that they can do in terms of improving water quality, and they act as ecosystem engineers and create richer habitats for greater variety of wildlife on a very localized level, and do help with slowing the flow. There's some very impressive hydrological impacts that have been reported, but there is also the benefits they can provide, but there's also potential negative impacts, particularly in terms of food production and trees which are immediately adjacent to rivers where beavers are present.
And migratory fish, I think.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that there's been, in fact, I think today is the final day that you can respond to the DEFRA consultation about the England-wide beaver strategy. Part of the reason that we've been, we're saying that we're supportive of them locally and would like to see how, make it an explicit part of our plans for the future, is because as things stand, the current legal status of the wild beavers in the River Otter, and also the plans that we've just been consulted on that DEFRA outlined, both indicate that basically the wild beaver population's here to stay, and they can, they can freely roam across the hillside and enter the River Culm. So where if we were 200 miles away from any wild beavers, then this would be something which would perhaps need more of a proactive direct intervention from someone to start a wild beaver release project. But the context in the River Culm is that actually the beavers are probably going to turn up at some point, if they haven't already this winter, and therefore it's going to be good if we try to proactively manage that, so that acting as that kind of broker between the possible positives and the possible negatives are managed. Because
maybe as Bruce suggested, you should put support and manage beavers rather than support beavers.
Yes, that's good. Good tweak to the text. And the outcomes of the DEFRA consultation will make that clearer. It's useful timing in some ways, because we've been able to see what the draft plans are in the consultation, but that's obviously still the outcome of that consultation, and the precise plans will be known in the new year. So during the next few months we'll be able to have even more clarity on that and know what the situation is.
Good. Thanks,
Nick. Any other questions or comments? Oh, there's a few that have come up in the chat actually. Anything that you spotted tonight?
I can't find anyone to put my hand up. John Berry.
Hi, John Berry. Yeah.
It says here, plant more trees. Are we planting more trees on where the river floods to take up some of the wet flooded areas, or what? Plant more trees is a bold statement. I just wonder where we're planting these trees. And yeah. I must say that whilst I support beavers, they have no predators like the badger. I'm going to upset a lot of people, I know. But if you get one beaver creating one dam, half a mile down, less than that, you get another beaver creating more dams. Where the dam do we get with so many beavers? This is the fact that we've got to be honest and open about.
Sorry, John.
If you get too many badgers, in my idea, in a river area, how long the river is, you could have worse flooding than you have with just one beaver.
Sorry. Do you mean the risks of having a sort of a saturated population of beavers? You think would be? Okay.
If you get 5 beaver dams on a river of the Culm at stretches, you will get more flooding than you have 1 beaver dam. That's my opinion.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think it'd be interesting to explore that sort of issue with the experts like Exeter University and Devon Wildlife Trust, because I think that they've, certainly what we've seen in the Otter is that it's taken, there's been wild beavers in the River Otter catchment for nearly 10 years, I think, and there's now I think about 50 or 60 individuals. So there's not and that's across a similarly large size catchment. And I think the carrying capacity that they've estimated of if the beaver population was sort of saturated in the River Otter would be much higher than that. But I don't know. But I suppose part of what I'm saying is it would take decades for beavers to be that widespread and that kind of population density. And I think on the comment about whether that increased population would increase or decrease flood risk, I think, like anything with this, it's the devil's in the detail. It would require a bit of modelling and analysis, and would depend on the particular locations, I imagine. But I
think it's worth saying on the whole topic of beavers that what we know is that they can have a lot of benefits in the net, in the round, and they're probably going to be able to come over into the catchment, whatever. And our focus will be on managing them responsibly. And that's what DEFRA is currently consulting on, is setting up beaver management groups for each local catchment. Mm-hmm. And I think we support that concept, but we recognise that in overall picture is they're generally pretty good for achieving what we want, looking for here. Should we go to David? Got your David Smith.
Sorry. Dominic, thank you. I think you might have covered what I was going to say. Actually, the critical thing that we put into the DEFRA consultation that we responded to on behalf of South West Water was exactly that. The management issue is the main thing. With proper management support, the things that Gentleman John expressed in terms of flood risk locally, it can be dealt with and should be dealt with. So without that management support, beavers represent a risk to landowners, and that's obviously a worry for us as a water company and a utility provider, and for other landowners. So it's a double-edged thing, really. If the management structures are right, so the Culm vision needs to reflect that viewpoint that the management structures have to be right. But the benefits are clear, absolutely right. And the benefit you haven't mentioned is water quality. The evidence is that the dams trap so much sediment, they have a really significant, like 30% or more improvement on water quality, particularly the nutrients in water, and particularly phosphates, which is a critical one for a river life. So there are clear benefits, but the management's got to be there. That's the message. Yeah.
Thanks, David. That's really helpful. I'm just going to pop that down as well. And was there anything else, Dominic, that's come up in the chat that I might have missed?
I said planting more trees. Where are these trees going to be planted?
Oh yeah, thanks, John. Sorry, that was the other part of your question, wasn't it? I think apologies if if it's too blunt a statement. We've tried to take the number 10 Downing Street approach to simplifying messages and got it down to 3 words. So improve soil infiltration, reconnect floodplains, plant more trees. But again, the devil's in the detail. So planting more trees, yes, that is part of you can see this in the image. It's focused on strategic areas. So part of what we've modelled was, well, 2 things really. One was about planting trees in riparian strips. So riparian means immediately adjacent to a watercourse, and the aim of that was to slow overland flow. So in flood events, the water basically hits the rougher area of the trees and slows down. So instead of rushing over a relatively smooth sort of grassy floodplain, it is slowed down by trees, and also particularly really high up in the catchment where you've got really small streams or overland flow and runoff that's being created, but where there's not actually a water course yet. In those sorts of areas, there's opportunity to really increase tree cover. Again, in a way that is sensitive to the landscape. There's the recent right place, right tree guidance, which has come out, which is going to help steer what that, where those interventions are targeted. But so it's a constant balance really between where you might want to plant a tree for the best benefits in terms of slowing down floodwater might not actually work with local ecological or landscape interests. So that's something which we're looking at in more detail and balancing those interests and opportunities. And we'll hear a bit more about some of the work that we're already delivering with landowners. But I suppose an important thing to mention in this project is that we have got big fancy models and analysis and research, which we've done, but we also have some excellent colleagues and team members who are out on the ground talking to farmers and landowners, trying to deliver this stuff full time. And they are, using their eyes and ears and brain to come up with ideas, not just telling them not just doing what the computer tells them. So there's a balance of those different competing interests and also common sense that comes into play. Does that answer your question, John, or do you want to?
Yeah, it is. Because planting trees, I can't see, quite honestly, how they will hold back a floodwater, because they're round, they aren't square. So you get water rushing past them. And if you get any debris coming down, they'll get caught up in the tree. That I'm being oversimplified, perhaps.
Yeah, I think.
But to me, it's not the thing, and you've got to go back, like you say. It's fine looking on a computer model, but the computer hasn't lived with nature, lived with rivers for 70 or 80, 90, 100 years. It's man and nature, man and the knowledge of the waterway on which that farmer or farmer's family have been over many years.
We've got an expert on the call, actually, Tom Dorban from the Environment Agency, and he's got his hand up. He might be wanting to come in on this. Tom, go ahead.
Thanks, Dom. I don't know if the expert tag is necessarily needed, but Tom Dorban, I'm a senior flood advisor for the EA. There are a few reasons why we could plant trees in the catchment. There are ability to open up soil porosity, increase the rate of infiltration with the root network. Obviously, that takes a little bit of time as they grow, as do a lot of these different factors. There's the ability to intercept rain before it hits the ground, and it lengthens the amount of time the water takes to get onto the surface of the landscape and then into the river through runoff. But the one about the trees being in the floodplain is just about the amount of friction that the floodplain has. So if you think about how rough a grassy field would be in a floodplain, it's actually quite smooth in terms of the way you would measure the friction of that surface. If you look at a wood, you've not only got the trees, but you've also got all of the fallen limbs from the trees, you've got the leaf litter, you've got all of the associated roughening of the floodplain that goes with it. So it's about increasing the friction of the whole surface of the forest floor, not just the trees themselves. We've got loads of maps that show where they can be planted, but equally, like you said, we'd need to do a lot of consultation with the landowner to see what their experience is, because the maps only tell us so much. But they are really beneficial. There have been some studies that have looked at the different the improvements that trees can make to infiltration rates. So, for example, there's a direct comparison with some woodland against some farmed grassland. The infiltration rates where the woodland was were about 74% higher, I think, than the grassland immediately next door. So they can provide a lot of benefit. It's just about where you put them, making sure they're not detrimental to other issues in the catchment, and the amount of them that you can install. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Tom. Great. Well, yeah, I'm conscious of the time. I think it's been really helpful to have those challenges and explore those issues in a bit more detail. Is there anything else in the chat or anything else that people would like to add?
There are two questions, Stephen, about are we working with Network Rail?
I thought we could cover that one when we come to the next bit that's relevant on that. So I've just posted that down on the board.
Yeah, thanks. Lucy and Delwyn, I'll talk about that in a bit more detail a bit later on when we talk about other organisations and partners. But yes, yeah, we'll come on to that. So yeah, any other thoughts on these actions and aims? Yeah, thanks for those who've put their thoughts on the mural board already. And is there, yeah, I suppose as well, Dominic, did you want to add anything else about these?
Well, very briefly, just that you can see with the little symbols that we've used there against each of these three key actions, how they deliver on multiple outcomes. And soil is the biggest one because it has the biggest impact on flood and drought. It's the key to unlocking the issues we face with both of those things. It's absolutely the first and most important thing we can do. So, and that is mostly about farmland management, reducing compaction, and putting in and making sure that farming techniques don't expose soils to erosion or compaction. And really that's why so many of the current changes in farming support and subsidy are very important for us, because those are opening up the window to getting those changes happening on the ground. And probably the next most important thing in terms of tackling flooding issues and to a certain extent drought is reconnecting the floodplains and creating space for nature along the valley bottoms, where at the moment the river's being constrained into a narrow channel that gets deeper and deeper. By opening it out, and as they're doing at Killerton, and we're doing in small scale with our other nature-based solutions, that is a brilliant way of creating a more resilient landscape. And finally, trees, as we've just been discussing. Yeah. So that's like the sort of quick top line, you know, what are the most important things we can do in the catchment? That's it, really.
Yeah, and yeah, the icons here obviously indicate that there are these actions cut across multiple different aims and themes. There'll be other more specific sort of narrower actions in the action plan which we're developing to deliver this blueprint and the vision for the future, which perhaps are less sort of cross-cutting, but in some ways will be just as important, because they'll be really key for delivering certain aims in certain locations where they're particularly relevant. So I'm going to move on to what we've been up to, what the actions are that are already happening, unless anyone has any final comments or questions on the vision and what we've talked about so far. I'm going to take that as a note. So yes, so to give you, so the blueprint and the vision is for sort of a 25 years into the future. The action plan to get there is a key part of the blueprint for the Culm, and is an exciting part of this project, really, because we're looking at long-term planning, getting to know the area really, really well, and trying to link in with other investments and public money, which is going to deliver some of these things in the coming years and decades. But as part of connecting the Culm, we've got £250,000 to try some of these actions and working with nature, working with landowners and local people. We are delivering and monitoring some of these interventions this year and next year, and we'll be using that to inform the ongoing plans and find out how well nature-based solutions work in certain contexts. This is just to give you a bit of an update, really, because it's been an exciting few months. So far we've got 16 sites that have been agreed with landowners, which has committed about 2/3 of the £250,000 budget. We've also had we've been linking in with other funds and opportunities. So this year the Farming and Protected Landscape initiative has been launched, which is locally it's key because part of the catchment is in the Blackdown Hills AONB, and other protected landscapes have similar funding available to work with landowners as part of the agricultural transition. So post-Brexit, there's quite a few changes to agri-environment schemes, which some of you will know lots about. And then this is really just to show a bit about where we've got to, really. So we've at the previous forum, we showed a bit of the analysis and the work that had been done in terms of the technical modelling and the workshops with experts to prioritise areas and zoom in on what we wanted to do and where. And that has informed our plans and informed some of the key activities of people in the team who've been out then taking those targeted areas and working with landowners on nature-based solutions opportunities in those areas, and drawing up designs for delivering some of these interventions. And excitingly, we've now actually got to a point where we've delivered a handful of those sites in the last few months. So yeah, thanks especially to, I know some of the landowners are on the call, so yeah, thank you for working with us on this. It's fantastic to see some actual change happening on the ground, and obviously we'll be monitoring those sites and feeding that back to through this process and feeding it into our plans for the future. And it was great to see a few weeks ago there was quite a severe downpour overnight, and the river burst its banks and actually filled up this area which we've reconnected to the floodplain. So you can see there's a new bund there and some scrapes and interventions that have been put in place to reconnect the river to the floodplain here. Not dissimilar to what's happening further downstream at National Trust Silverton, but on a smaller scale. And in that event, it worked to some degree. You know, we could see that what we started to do on the ground is having the desired effect. So that's really exciting. And the other thing that we've been up to really is we started a Pharma focus group. So we've had a few events so far. We've had a site visit to nature-based solution sites in the Catchment in the summer, and we also had another meeting with a group of farmers who represent different scales and different types of agricultural businesses across the Catchment, and had some really useful and interesting discussions about what is possible currently to help in terms of delivering this vision, what the appetite is, what the barriers are, and where there might be ways for working together on joint funding opportunities. So that is a really key element of the blueprint and our plans for the future, because we really need to bring the people who own and manage land. We're talking about landscape scale vision and changes here. So we really need to make sure that it's not just an academic exercise, that we bring farmers and landowners and land managers along on the journey. They understand the challenges and the opportunities that we face together. And that's been a really successful endeavour so far. So looking to next year, we've got another 12 months really of activity on this. So there'll be more farmer engagement. So there'll be more visits and hopefully some more firm plans for joining up on collaborative applications for funding. There'll be more delivery at Silverton as well as more sites upstream. So as I said, we've got 16 sites so far. There'll probably be 20 plus sites in total, all of which will be delivered by this time next year. And we'll be monitoring those and feeding that monitoring and information back into the blueprint plans. So that's just a bit of an update really on, as well as the talking and the plans for the future and the sort of the fluffier stuff, which is all exciting that we've been talking about. There's also, it's a great part of this project really that we're actually doing stuff on the ground as well. So any thoughts on that, or anything that I've missed in the chat, Dominic?
We've referenced Silverton and FIPL as well, the Farming and Protected Landscapes budget project. So those both come from the chat.
Great. Okay.
And Mike Kemp has just asked, you're engaging with the farming community. Is there any with industry such as Heel Mill?
Yeah, that's a good question. We'll come on to the delivering with different organisations and partners as part of the next part of the session. But I think now is time for the first question, Dominic. We've got
Yeah, we have. we have a poll question, and I'm going to launch the question now, and just be glad if you could answer it. How far do you think working with nature-based solutions will be effective in delivering the vision for a resilient River Culm catchment? So if you could just, you should be able to see that poll now.
So you should be able to see the multi-choice options.
Getting there. Okay, I'm going to stop it there. We've had 84% participation, and I'll just share the results. You can see there, 61% of people think it'll be a lot, 27% a fair bit, 12% a little bit. Okay, great. Thank you. It's good feedback.
Yes, yeah. Does anyone want to expand on what they chose and why? Anyone who chose? No? Anyone who chose?
Hands up.
Okay.
It's me again.
Hi, John.
I back to my old slogan of not dredging and letting the river just flow. I can take you to a couple places where this is happening. The river is just overflowing, and you're getting willows and alders regrowing, and it's going to be one hell of a mess. And it is now already. If you let that go on for 5 or 6, another 10 years, what's going to happen? There'll be one massive area of alders and willows regrowing and reseeding themselves. Now, is this looking after nature and looking after the river? Because it will happen. I'm sorry, it will.
It probably is exactly what we want to see happen more of, John. Yes, beside the river, down in the floodplain, and that's a very valuable thing to have happening, because it will protect the city and the populations downstream by slowing the flow of water.
Yeah, but I suppose a key part of what we're talking about here is doing that ideally in a way which is managed and planned, and the landowner is compensated or is doing it as part of their plan for their land. So we wouldn't want to be seeing that happen on super rich high grade agricultural land. But I think what you described, John, in some people's eyes is exactly what you'd want to see happen in certain places. So I think I know that we talked before about the dredging issue locally, and I think Ian Hooper's on the line, and I know that we've offered and we plan to come and meet you down on site at some point in the coming weeks, so we can see it with our own eyes. But we do have, we're talking about 100 square mile river catchment here, and I think that dredging certain locations isn't going to be what solves the problem. The problem is generated across a huge area, a huge landscape that needs to be managed in a way which supports the risks and the solutions that we want to see. There's a couple of hands that have gone up. James, I think you were first. Do you want to say anything?
I just wanted to explain why I said a fair bit rather than a lot. Coming back to your original question, and I think nature-based solutions, obviously, in my view, can do all sorts of things. But I also don't think we should forget the power of general residents, people who just live in the catchment, and perhaps, what they might do within, their day-to-day living about, dishwasher liquid they select and the impact of phosphates because of that, and other things about what they might be able to do in their gardens, etc. and so forth. And then also how farming practices that isn't naturally associated with habitats, but could support things like pollinators differently, or integrated farm management could support things like that. So I just think, there's other stuff that is really important to this catchment as well. Nature-based solutions, it's really important, but let's not forget the other stuff as well.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much, James. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, I think that there's other elements of the solution as well, which we'll come on to in a moment. But yeah, David, do you want to add anything?
Sure, thank you. So in support of nature-based solutions, I did actually tick a lot, but I nearly ticked more than a bit. But so my position really was that the pre-1945 farm landscape of small fields, boundaries running across the slope, and soils that weren't compacted by heavy modern four-wheel drive tractors gave that landscape resilience. So I'm not advocating turning the clock back, but that landscape was in place then really helped prevent the flood events that we're seeing more frequently than we did back then, although there were significant flood events occasionally. But it's that, so that is why it seems a logical progress to go back to, first and foremost, I'm not talking about things in the river, but the good soil management on the slopes really is the fundamental thing that will reduce the risk. And I think that's what Tom's alluding to in his comment about addressing the symptoms rather than dealing with the issues caused by siltation in rivers, etc.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, Tom, did you want to add anything to that?
I've said in the chat really that we get asked a lot of questions about why we don't do desilting anymore. So just to be clear, the agency and predecessor organisations used to undertake desilting exercises, as did the local authority, but we never actually had specific funding in the past to do desilting. We just had a bigger budget for river management activities. When budgets have become tighter, it's become apparent that we don't have a sustainable funding plan to do that activity. So revenue funding wise, it's quite difficult to justify, but also from a sustainability point of view, what we ought to be looking at is actually a better solution to the problem of siltation. So it's not let's get the silt out of the ditches, it's why are those ditches silting up in the first place? Where's the silt coming from? How can we reduce the amount of silt that's generated and therefore the maintenance burden on keeping those ditches clear? That's the sort of approach projects like this can take. So healthy soils, woodland creation, leaky dams, things that can hold the silt in the landscape where it's needed, where it's useful for agricultural productivity, are better than doing desilting longer term.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tom. Yeah, and thanks, thanks Lucy as well. We've captured your comment in response to what James was saying about sort of local people and residents and the choices that they make. So yeah, I think we'll move on there. But yeah, if there's anything else that comes up, feel free to keep dropping things on Mural in the right place or in the chat, and we'll pick them up at some point. So yeah, moving on now to what other actions are needed to deliver the vision. I think, you know, this is going to be quite a lot of work. It's going to involve quite a lot of money and quite a lot of time. But fortunately, there's quite a few things that are already happening and quite a few things coming down the tracks which are going to help. So we've kind of summarized this in this diagram of some of the key partners that we're talking to and working with already in the project and in the delivery of this longer term action plan. And some of these are in the room online today, obviously. And I just wanted to kind of highlight a couple, and you can explore this in your own time too. And also to say that the around the edge is a sort of traffic light system really of where we're at in terms of certainty about the funding being available and to help deliver what's being described in that section. So so there's a couple of greens and there's quite a few which are sort of tentative at the moment. And really what we wanted to sort of show this today, but this is really the sort of almost like a dashboard summary of the conversations and the work that we're doing in the background. And we'll be reporting on this again in the coming months. And, you know, certainly hope that when we have our next forum in 6 months' time, there'll be lots of green and not a lot of anything else, because we'll hopefully have lots of very firm actions and plans in place to deliver things. So yeah, I'll just mention a few to start with. I'll come back to Network Rail because I know that there's a few people who've asked questions about that. Firstly, I just wanted to mention that Devon, there's a Devon Flood and Coastal Resilience Innovation Programme, which is funded by DEFRA and is part of a national programme for flooding and coastal resilience. And there's a Devon-wide project which has been successful in securing £7 million, and we were part of the bid for that. And obviously, and I think Tom did a lot of the legwork or helped with Devon and Cornwall applications, and yeah, that's fantastic. That's been successful, so that's why there's a big green tick there. And actually, as of today, there's a recruitment which has opened up, because we are taking on a new project officer to join the Connecting the Culm team to help deliver this piece of work in the Culm catchment. So it's all about focusing on small catchments and small communities that are at risk of flooding, and that particularly experience very rapid response to rainfall. So it's going to be targeting 3 to 5 sub-catchments and communities in the Culm catchment. So really zooming down into more specific geographies than some of what we've been able to do across Connecting the Culm so far, which has obviously looked at the whole 100 square miles. And it's really exciting because it comes with, yeah, an extra pair of hands for me and the team, and also some extra, capital funding for delivering more nature-based solutions, especially in the sort of the time frame up to 2027. And it's all about innovation and monitoring as well. So that we try new things, monitoring that and feeding them back to the Devon and the national pilot. So there's a link there. If you or anyone you know might be interested and think you might be, might be suitable, then you can click on the. It's not the whole post-it note, but it's the. Sorry, I think someone's tried to double click it, but has created a post-it note. You just single click the one that appears at the bottom. So that's really exciting news, and will be a key sort of next step for the project. And there's obviously other irons in the fire in terms of ways of delivering this work beyond next year. Another one I wanted to mention was Network Rail, because a few people have asked about this. So currently Network Rail aren't an active partner in the project. They haven't funded any of the work that we've done so far, but they're quite an interesting one because they are one of the potential major beneficiaries. If we do lots of work across the catchment, the railway line at Heel is one of the main points where sort of hotspots for flooding in the River Culm catchment. And we saw this just a few weeks ago, as we've talked about. There was quite a severe rainfall event overnight, and that closed the railway and caused quite a significant sort of safety issue and financial issue for Network Rail, because lots of trains had to be cancelled and put on buses instead between Exeter St David's and Tiverton Parkway. And some of you have talked about they have a flood alleviation scheme to try to solve that problem. So currently the railway there has a risk of flooding of 1 in 2 years. So what that means is that there's a 50% chance each year that there's a rainfall event which causes the railway to flood. And what they're proposing for their engineered scheme at Heel will increase the standard of protection up to a 1 in 5 year return period event. So there's a 20% chance each year that railway line floods. And I suppose what we're really interested in doing and working with Network Rail more on is, I suppose, similar to what Tom was talking about earlier, which is dealing with the problem rather than the symptom. So really looking at the 100 square miles that drains to that point in the catchment where that problem is felt, because the problem is being caused by rainfall falling elsewhere. So I would say so far they're not an active partner in the project. However, they have verbally committed to looking at this issue in more detail. So we've got our big catchment model, which explores the flood risks and the response to different storm events. They've got their very localized flood model, which does that at a local level for Heel. And we're looking at the possibility of basically kind of cookie cutter their model and ours together, to see what the benefits are if we explore more nature-based solutions and deliver more upstream, what benefits that could have. And our initial modelling is quite promising, and therefore hopefully that will then help to build a business case for Network Rail to invest in the long-term resilience of their asset, because they're only going to have a 1 in 5 year standard of protection as things stand, and climate change is going to threaten that. They are definitely interested in working with us, but haven't to date, is the short answer. And if you want to see a bit more of the conversation that we've had with Network Rail, you can, if you go to that link, you can see a YouTube video, which is an interview recorded by myself and Mark Howells, who's the Western Route drainage engineer. So he's the person responsible for managing drainage risks for Network Rail across the southwest, and he really wants to sort this out. He really, he's been involved in the Cowley Bridge scheme. He's been involved in Dawlish, and the millions of pounds that Network Rail have spent at trying to solve this problem. And Heel is still, remains their kind of big risk and weak point in the system. So they are very interested in this now as part of this project, but also in the longer term, later this decade as well. So to those who are asking about the existing Heel scheme, I suppose the answer is that we're not inherently opposed to what they're doing at Heel. What we're really saying is that isn't the whole solution. The solution needs to involve looking upstream, and we are working together with them on that. So we're not trying to stop them in their tracks at Heel, but I think I was actually at the public consultation event there last night at Heel and spoke to some of the community and Network Rail colleagues there, and there are opportunities to improve the scheme at a local level. But really, I think, from my point of view, it's about looking beyond Heel and looking at the wider catchment. So hopefully that's answered some of the questions, explained a bit more about where we're at. If anyone who asked those questions originally wants me to expand on anything or answer anything else, then please let me know. And I think, Ian, you've raised your hand in the chat.
Am I on? John Berry, or no? I can't find it to raise hands. Am I unmuted, John Berry?
Oh, we can hear you, John. Yes, go ahead. Well,
yeah.
And Ian will come to you next.
I can't find a rate. I was cut out just now. I did just come back in again. I admire everything that the Culm is doing to find projects and do excellent things and mind-boggling things up the Culm. But we've been drummed into our heads at Devon County all about this risk assessment. So a question is, after all this has been done and put into place, a lot of the experiments and planting and beaver dams, etc., a lot of this has been, all of it's expense of and money coming from government and done by the Culm. Who then is responsible after your agreement has run out? And how long will you be maintaining the trees that you've planted, because they've got to be all maintained? Does, after certain many years, come back to the cost of anything does go wrong to the farmer or the landowner?
So I think just quickly on this, Tom may have an answer about other types of nature-based solutions, but quickly on trees, it's Woodland Creation is quite an interesting one. Landowners can get paid for planting trees or allowing areas to become wooded. They can then sell the carbon credits created from growing trees and storing carbon in the ground. They can also get maintenance grants for managing woodland, and they also then can sell the timber in the longer term as well. So for trees, yes, it's all about the landowner, really. It's not about what we do. And that at the bottom of this diagram is about agri-environment schemes. So there's catchment sensitive farming. We've spoken to Natural England just last week about the rollout of catchment sensitive farming to the wider area, which is going to cover much more of Devon and Cornwall. There's existing schemes, John, that support landowners to make decisions like this. We're not coming in to replace those. We're signposting to them and using them where appropriate and filling in the gaps where we need to. And I think, yeah, the other things that we're talking about doing are, I think, some of them are more permanent changes, like changes to connect the river back to its floodplain. Again, I think the maintenance would be with the landowner, but I can't imagine it being a particularly maintenance heavy regime. Do you want to add anything to that, Tom, from your experience?
I think you're right, Stephen. I mean, the trick with a lot of these solutions is to try and make them as unintensive to look after as possible and base them around the natural processes that are going on. So if we look at restoration of habitats, the habitat survives and thrives in certain areas of the catchment based on the passage of water or the condition of the soil or the chemicals that are present or not present or what have you. So trying to find a way to fit things into the natural processes that occur in a given location or the business model of the landowner of the farm is the trick with this. If we impose lots of structures on someone that someone's got to do maintenance on, then it does get a bit tricky, and there's not a coherent answer I can give you around that at the moment. There are some payments, as Stephen's mentioned, that helps make it easier, but that will start to get resolved a little bit in a couple of years' time when the agri-environment schemes are changed. But for now, I think the trick is to find the least intensive things that are beneficial for land managers, landowners, as well as society generally. So that's soil health improvements that can look at increased crop yield, something like that, which it's just good soil husbandry at the end of the day. So I think the maintenance thing, we could get really hung up on it. Woodland planting and things like that are well catered for, because if you plant, you then have to have a felling license to remove them, so they're quite protected in that sense. But a lot of it is about how can you design these things to be as unobtrusive and untricky to look after in the first place.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tom. Yeah, so hopefully that answers your question, John. And Ian, come back to you.
Yeah, fine.
Thanks.
Yeah. The beaver will take some felling anyhow, so that's all right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's going to eat all that willow copse that you're concerned about, so then you won't have any worries. Ian.
Hi, Stephen. Yeah, I just want to mention Heal very quickly. I work for the Environment Agency, and I've been working with Network Rail and their consultants for many a year, looking at their scheme that they're proposing putting in to reduce the risk of flooding to the railway. And one thing that's evident, based upon the fact I've been to the location numerous times when it's been flooding. I was there 2-3 weeks ago when it flooded, and I've been there when it hasn't flooded. And I've observed the landscape and the management of the land over the years. And I think what's key there, interestingly, is how the floodplain between Station Road and the railway line, so it's downstream of Station Road, how that's managed to help reduce flood risk. And that floodplain is actually an area where you probably wouldn't want dense tree growth or planting, because you'd probably want to ensure that is relatively smooth. So going back to Tom Dorbin's analogy of having a smooth floodplain, you probably want that smoother. So that's an example of where you probably would require some intervention over the years to manage that, to reduce flood risk, but that'd be reducing it locally, to reduce the risk to the railway, to the roads, to the businesses and the properties there. So I thought I'd throw that in as an example of where perhaps there would require a degree of intervention. And what's clear to me is that there's clearly been dredging activities over the years that Heal, and that activity is potentially actually increased flood risk, because the arisings from the dredging, there's evidence it's been deposited on the floodplain, and actually it hindered the ability of the floodplain to convey water downstream. So that's evident as well to a degree. So I'd sort of throw that in as an example of where there is a legacy problem, intervention is required. And clearly on other parts of the floodplain, tree planting is the right thing to do, because we want to encourage the flow of water out of the bank and slow the water down. But that it's about the right trees in the right places, going back to that phrase. So I thought I'd throw that in the melting pot about Heal.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. That's really helpful. And actually, it reminds me as well to come back to this comment question earlier about engaging with the Heal mill and other industries. So I think the Heel Mill specifically, no, we haven't engaged them yet, and I think Ian's just alluded to, one of the things that you potentially actually don't want to do on the land that Heel Mill own around the Heel or up and downstream of the railway line, and the plans for Network Rail at Heel is necessarily to plant lots of trees on that land and create a backwater effect and actually kind of slow flood water down, rather than getting it past that area and trying to improve conveyance, which is what the Network Rail scheme is about. So I would say Heel Mill, yes, we would, there might be ways of working with them and supporting the local community to explore options with them in terms of nature, working with nature and nature-based solutions. But I think, as we said, it's about the right solutions in the right places, and there's risks with some of these issues, some of these solutions, as well as the potential benefits. So it's not as simple as saying do one thing and roll it out everywhere with every possible landowner. We would support with the resources that we've got available in the project. But really, I'd say two other things quickly. One is that most of our engagement work has been focused in the headwaters, really, rather than down in the floodplain around Heel. The nature of a catchment of this size is that you get more benefits if you slow water down right at the top. So all the priority areas that we've been zooming into and trying to work with farmers in are primarily up at in the catchment headwaters, rather than down in the floodplain, because if you're trying to slow the flow of water, then in some ways it's too late at that point. You need to be solving the problem further upstream. But I think there is a valid point here, which I think is something we'll be exploring more as part of the next bit of the project in this session, which is other people and organisations that we haven't engaged so far. Something that stood out to me yesterday at the in-person public consultation of Network Rail in Heel was that there's quite a broad spectrum of the community that come through the door, which don't necessarily come to online events like this one. So we've had a challenging time with COVID in the last nearly 2 years now, doing a lot of things online. There's some stuff that we've done in person, but we could be doing more to engage businesses and particular businesses that are at risk of flooding or that own land, which could be part of the solution, which aren't the farming community. We could be doing more to do that as part of the next steps of the project. I'm conscious of the time, so I'm going to move on. Thanks, Lucy, for that comment. You've beat us to it. I'm just going to quickly say on the community involvement side of things. So obviously, like I just said, with COVID, we've done a lot of things online. Fortunately, this summer we've actually had a fantastic opportunity to do lots of things out and about. And we really just wanted to do a shout out, really, to say thank you to everyone that's been involved in that in some way. And especially the volunteer groups that have been so active and have done a great job of monitoring water quality, getting trained up by West Country Rivers Trust, as you can see in this photo, and also the community-led Himalayan Balsam Action Group, who are going from strength to strength and supported by the project, but being sort of led and organised by community volunteers. So they're looking across the catchment to try to take out Himalayan balsam where it's causing issues, and always looking for more volunteers. So if you want to get more actively involved in your local area and become a sort of a steward of your local watercourse and monitor its water quality, or volunteer to take out Himalayan balsam if you're seeing that as an issue in the sort of late summer, then there's opportunities to do that and link up with others in the catchment. And we also had a great chance to go to lots of different community events across the catchment, and at 5 different schools as well. We in the summer term did some workshops down by the river and and on school grounds to explore the blueprint vision and the issues with them, and also hear a bit more from primary school children about what they think the issues and solutions are. And yeah, Claire Viner, who I think is still on the call, has developed 3 stories that drains to the River Culm. And she's had a chance to tell those stories at in-person events in the recent months, but it was also going to be telling them an online event in December. So you can sign up for that on our website, which is great. So yeah, I think we're going to move on to the next part, but I just wanted to say, thanks to everyone that's been involved, and it's been great to see some people in person when the summer and the COVID rules allowed. Do you want to, Dominic, can I hand over to you to introduce this next part? And if anyone's got any questions, I'll have a quick check in the chat.
Oh, great. Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks.
Yeah, so Stephen's been talking a lot about how we're engaging with organisations to get the action plan delivered. But there's a lot that can be done as well in communities, either individually or in coming together collaboratively. And so we've listed some of these here, and it would be great just to get your feedback on them. Any ideas that you've got you'd like to share with us about how some of those aims that we've outlined, the strategic aims, could be delivered at a local level, perhaps in your village, perhaps in your street, perhaps just in your back garden. You know, it can be any range of interventions. Every little bit helps. So please, just a little interactive session now. Dive in and add some post-its or put the comments in the chat, and we'll add them to the board. Stephen, if you can zoom out a bit so people can see the rest of the suggestions. That's maybe just a little bit back in.
I'll zoom back in so you can read them. But there's 2 things really. You can add an orange box if you want to add an idea about how you as an individual or your community can take an action. And if you want to add your thoughts or suggestions on what has been proposed already, then you can add that as a yellow post-it note and sort of attach it to an orange one. So as an example, and ideally if you can put your name and location, then that will help us follow up and join people up that want to do things in either similar things in similar areas or one of those 2. This is just an example here, but there's quite a few here. So some of which you've already talked about, like practical volunteering to monitor water quality or join the Himalayan Balsam Action Group. Other opportunities, like I think Lucy, you mentioned earlier about coming to a local community event. So I think you said about a repair cafe in Bradninch. So if you haven't already added that, then we could drop that on there in a sec.
I'll add that one, yeah.
Thanks. Oh, someone's adding circles. That's exciting to see.
Is that Lucy?
Great, thanks. That's thanks Claire for the reminder that you've got the online event on the 9th of December and also a live event in the community pub at Stoke Cowan, which people can go to in person on the 14th, which would be great. So we'll be able to record the live event and hoping to explore that in other formats as well.
I think it's a nice comment someone's made about parish level nature recovery plans, and the Devon wide nature recovery strategy will probably be emerging at some point next year. So it'll be great to see at local level more detailed plans emerging that kind of help deliver that county-wide strategy at the local parish level.
Yeah.
And the Blackdown Hills has also launched its own nature recovery plan, so that's also something that can be looked at, and that's got lots of interesting links to be connected with.
Yeah, thanks. And Delwyn has just added as well that there still might be an opportunity to feed into the Silverton neighbourhood plan. So that's looking at, yeah, that includes new footpath, cycle routes, etc. Yeah, that's quite far down in the catchment, but could be an interesting one to have a look at what our model's saying.
Yeah. And that's something we were reflecting on earlier, is that a lot of the conversations we're having with organisations are also about policy links. It's not just about funding for action on the ground, is it? It's also about making sure policies are developed in the right way, and the blueprint helping to influence other plans and strategies.
Thanks very much. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just copying some of the others out of the chat that have come up here, because there's quite a few. Oh, Gareth, I only just spotted your comment as well. I think, I don't know if Dan is still on the call, but we're going to be, we've got an updated wording for our agreements with landowners about tree planting and woodland that's been created. So it's not, I think, expecting a 100% survival rate for planted trees was quite quite harsh potentially. So we're now, I've spoken to some experts, and we've aligned with the Forestry Commission woodland creation rates. So you basically, I think it's something like you decide what level of density tree planting, or trees you want to exist in 5 years time, and then you plant about 130% of that amount, just allowing for natural issues that might reduce some of that. The success rate's not going to be 100%. So yeah, thanks for that, Gareth. We'll be in touch if we haven't already. I could see you do thumbs up. Thank you. Yeah, thanks very much for your support on your site. It's fantastic to see things happening on the ground. I hope to come and see it in person soon. And
Darwin's made a point about having promotional boards on site to encourage people, and actually the National Trust have set up a board about the Killerton project as you walk past the floodplain there, but more like that would be great. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
I like that comment about twinning communities between the upper and lower parts of the catchment. And you can imagine that being quite successful.
Yeah, that'd be great. There's another nice one here from Delwyn as well, which is about encouraging farm open days, so more interactions between farmers and local communities, the better. I think that's great. I think it's something which would be aligns quite well with that idea of twinning, especially right up the top and right down the bottom. So if we can connect Stoke Cannon and Heel and Silverton with people in Clay Hyden and Hemyock and Holberton, then that would be a fantastic thing to do, because we're all connected by water, but might not understand each other's kind of different contexts.
A catchment quiz. Yes. Sounds fun. You could rotate around the different pubs in the catchment.
Great.
This is these are sort of things that COVID has really made so difficult for us to develop. But as we emerge into hopefully slightly clearer waters, it's exciting to think of these kind of things happening.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Oh, Simon's mentioned restoration and mapping of springline mires. That's interesting. Yeah, it came up last week in a technical workshop that we were having, where I think in the Black Downs, we've got a relatively good idea of where all the springline mire habitats are now, but that's mostly using a proxy for existing habitat that's been observed, and not necessarily capturing where the underlying geology would create a spring, but that spring may have been lost, or the mire habitat isn't there because it's been intensified or lost in a different land use. And that's something which would be really interesting to explore further. But it's quite specific in terms of I suppose that the geology and the location of the Black Downs. But it's a good reminder, actually. I'll put it on here because it's something I was meaning to have a chat with Tim about. And there's a couple of interesting ones that have been added on here. I don't know who's put develop a clear set of mechanisms for each spatial priority locally. Do you want to expand on that, just to explain what that was? Is that you, James?
Yeah, afraid so.
That's great.
It's just, just thinking about if you want to do something in a place, in that particular place. So what would be the most appropriate mechanism that's going, i.e., funding mechanism that might support that? So in that place, it might be about the tree, forestry grant, or in that place it could be countryside stewardship. That place it could be the stuff that Wessex Water's doing. This place it could be, or Southwest Water, or this place it could be train line infrastructure, or whatever it is. Do you see what I mean? Just kind of biodiversity net gain could be somewhere else. So that sort of thing about just trying to be clear about how locally you could deploy these mechanisms the most satisfactorily, I suppose, and support farmers to kind of grab those as easy as possible.
Yeah, thanks, James. That's really useful. So I suppose when you say each spatial priority, do you mean particular? I suppose so. That's kind of coming at it from the point of view of the specific mechanisms that are available to people in a certain location for delivering a certain type of solution. Is that what you're trying to say? Yeah.
That sort of, sorry, that really clunky language.
No, that's great. No,
I've been a civil servant too long. Yeah.
No, that's great. No, that's really helpful. That is, it's already a complicated Venn diagram. When we had a farmer focus group a couple of weeks ago, well, it's actually over a month ago now, we tried to create a crib sheet for them based on what the grants that were available for different types of interventions like this, and the crib sheet ended up being 8 pages long.
Exactly.
That's just what's available now, and before we've added anything to it ourselves as well. And there's whole different different factors, different geographical things to think about. And I think that Venn diagram is already complicated. It's going to get more complicated, but certainly I see that as a role for part of the next steps of this project, and bringing together the blueprint and the sort of the delivery partners in the farmer focus group, making it clearer and easier for people is a key part of the next steps, really. Great. Anything else that I've missed in the chat, Dominic?
Tom's just plugged the flood risk management plan for the Southwest out for public consultation. I've dropped that in a post-it just to the left of the big pink block.
Thanks, Dominic.
But it's in the chat as well if you want to get the active link.
Yeah, if I can just explain that one very briefly. So it's a plan the Environment Agency produces for the whole of the country. There's various ones for different regions. It's our plan that we've developed with partners like Devon County Council, for example, about what we're collectively planning to do to manage flood risk between 2021 and 2027. It also shows how we're going to deliver the national flood risk management strategy at the local level. So it's starting to work towards things like climate change adaptation in that period of time over the next 6 years. It's out for consultation for the next 3 months. So if you have a look at the link, it should give you an overview of information about the plan, and then there's a link into the consultation portal if you wanted to provide any feedback. Sorry, shameless plug, but useful whilst it's open for consultation.
No problem, that's fine.
That's great. Yeah, thanks very much.
That's been a really good session. Thanks for all your input, everybody.
And I was going to say as well that after this we'll lock this board as it is, so everything can't be deleted. But if anything springs to mind afterwards, then please, come back and add to this, or get in touch with us on hello@connectingtheculm.com, because a key part of this, and I noticed as well that not very many people have put their names, but particularly if there's a particular thing that you want us to follow up on, or you want us to connect you with others in the catchment, then please add your name and location would be really helpful, because we'll talk about this in a moment, but part of what we're planning to do in between now and the next forum is to have a working group with a sort of a community level working group, so inviting people who are doing things already or interested in doing things at a local level to share ideas and work out what the opportunities and the barriers are, and try and work together on making stuff happen. So I think it's 6 o'clock, so I think Dominic, we've got another quick poll question I think now, and then
yes, we do.
We'll wrap up relatively quickly. But thanks everyone for your contributions there, and please, like I said, please come back and add to this if you want to in the next week.
Yeah, please do. Yes, and here's a quick poll. How much do you feel you can make a difference in making the catchment better? Okay, appropriately, we've got higher rate of participation this time than in the first question. almost 100%. Well done, everybody. I will end the poll there and share the results. And that's like about equal, a little and a fair bit. So it's all good stuff. Thank you very much. That's really useful.
Yeah, thanks.
And finally, next steps. Yes. Do you want to you can dive in on that, Stephen?
Just quickly, really, to say that this is, obviously today we've been talking a lot about the blueprint, and where we're at now and where we've come from is just kind of captured on this left-hand side of what you can see on the screen. What we did last year was lots of research and analysis and evidence. We had our forum. We then, at the start of this year, had some great participation in working groups and invited experts on certain topics to come and talk to us about things relating to the catchment, including climate change, beavers, trees. So you can catch up on those things on our YouTube channel. We've recorded all of those events, and had a busy but very interesting and enlightening start to the year. And then in April and May, we had a focus on climate change in the future, and had Rob Hopkins from the Transition Network to take us in his time machine to the future and do some visioning workshops, which again were really exciting, and they weren't recorded. You had to be there to experience those fully. So sorry if you missed that. Then we had the June forum, and then really what we've been doing since June is finalising this vision, which I think, as of today, we're basically kind of drawing a line under that and saying that's where we want to get to. That's what a resilient future for the River Culm looks like. And then really, in the next 6 months before the next forum, it's all about making it happen. So we've talked about how we're doing that with organisations already. So there's various specific kind of investments and delivery opportunities and funding opportunities which we're looking to coordinate and capitalise on in the next 6 months. So we're hoping to firm up some of those things and really come to this event in May with a sort of a final action plan, really, of outlining how things are going to be funded, who, what, when and where things are going to happen, which are going to help deliver the vision and the strategic aims that we want to achieve. And then sort of parallel to that process between now and May, we also want to support the community actions and ideas, some of which we've just been talking about. So again, yeah, in the new year, we'll be having a Catchment community event to explore what the opportunities and barriers are, how we can collaborate together, and yeah, really embed this more in communities, and hopefully as part of that, get out and about and see more of you in person as well. Yeah, anything to add to that, Dominic?
No, that was a great coverage, and yeah, look forward to engaging with you all through that process.
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions or comments on that process, or any other thoughts on how you'd like to be involved, then yeah, feel free to add something to the mural. Yeah, I'll just hand it to you, Dominic, to wrap up the last bit.
Yeah, finally, yeah, the dates for the diary. Claire's already mentioned her online event on 9th of December, and then I think she mentioned an in-person event shortly after that. So that was on the 14th of December at Stoke Cannon Pub, telling stories. So be there for that great opportunity. Practical volunteering and tree planting is on the cards. More details about that will be on. We'll promote that through the website, through our newsletter, and the National Trust will be also promoting it through their website. So those are coming up, and dates of all other opportunities. Yeah, keep your eye on the newsletter and social media, and we'll be communicating that with you. So yeah, we won't keep you any longer. That's been a really great event. Thank you, everybody. Stephen, do you want to add any final words?
No, I think that's all. Yeah, I'm conscious of that it's dinner time. So yeah, thanks again. And yeah, if anyone does have any other questions or comments, then feel free to shout now. Yeah.
Steve, John Berry.
Yes, hi John.
If you could send me 2 or 3 dates when we can meet on the bridge up below the Mary Harriers.
Yep.
If you could send me 2 or 3 dates and times, we can get that.
Yeah, I'll do that. Thanks, John. Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, we'll work that out. I think yeah, Ian, you wanted to help coordinate that as well.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
CC me in, Councillor Berry, and
yeah.
Steve. Yeah, we'll arrange some dates.
Thanks very much. That's great. Okay.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks everybody. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everybody. Thanks for coming.
Cheers, James. Thank you. See you again soon.